take it to the top. We got to keep it moving. We got to keep it high. We got to keep it moving. Make sure that we take it to the top. We got to keep it moving. We got to never stop. We got to keep it moving. Make sure that we take it to the top.
Hi guys, I'm Black Pearl and welcome to the latest episode of My Future, My Career.
And I am Zola. My Future, My Career is proudly brought to you by Nedbank.
Now this Nedbank initiative is aimed at equipping you with tools to make informed choices when it comes to choosing your career.
Yeah, we'll take an in-depth look at different careers, what they entail, and we chat to industry experts in different career fields.
And today we are looking at construction.
Yeah, now it seems lately that wherever I go, construction is continually on the go. There are roadworks around every corner, especially on the highways. And sometimes when I go to work, I don't even recognize the streets because new office blocks are going up all over the place.
I know what you mean. And let's not forget all those impressive Soccer World Cup stadiums. Now each of these construction projects need a lot of highly skilled people to design, plan, manage and supervise the work.
Now today we are going to find out more about the different careers you can pursue in construction. So if as a kid you loved Lego and building blocks, listen up, the construction sector might be just perfect for you.
Yes, of course, and who knows, you could be one of the people creating the new face of modern South Africa.
So let's get to it.
Make sure that we take it to the top.
We kick off with a special message from the man himself, Mike Brown, CEO of Nedbank.
If you plan carefully, set goals for yourself, and then work hard to achieve these, you can be anything you want to be.
So what happens way before the chisel hits the rock? Architect Philippa Tumubweni is going to tell us more.
Architecture is a very good degree because what we teach in architecture is basically lateral problem solving.
And later in the show, we get some top tips from the fairy godmother.
What I do is I teach people how to turn their dreams into reality.
All that and more on the show today.
Do you have big dreams of pursuing your ideal career, but don't have the financial means?
Well, check out the bursary info in your booklet to find out the many ways in which you can go and get funds to study.
Let's get straight into it. Check this out.
Make sure that we take it to the top.
Hello, my name is Mike Brown, and I'm the CEO or Chief Executive Officer of Nedbank. And I'm here today to talk to you about careers. Selecting a career for yourself can be a very confusing process. Now that you are in secondary school, you are expected to begin carving a path for your future. The difficulty is that at this point in your life, some of you might not have enough information or experience to make the right choice, and careers themselves are changing rapidly as technology evolves. I was fortunate enough to pursue a career I felt passionately about, but I was in a way lucky to start down the right path. Influenced more by what some friends were doing and what my parents thought than through any formal career guidance. After school, I completed a Bachelor of Commerce degree, followed by a diploma in accountancy, and finally qualified as a chartered accountant with Deloitte in the early 1990s. After 17 years in the banking industry, I have achieved a milestone in my career, to have the privilege of leading a proud organization that traces its history back to the 1830s. I say fortunate because I believe that I am the exception, not the rule. To help you become the exception and not the rule, we have launched the My Future, My Career initiative. Through a series of interviews with industry professionals and educational specialists, we hope to paint a clear picture of a wide range of careers available to you, so you don't just follow your friends like I did. To complement the series, we will also be providing each of you with a booklet containing national curriculum information, career information, places to study, and bursary information. These tools will assist you in making an informed choice that will point you in the right direction to match your skills, aptitudes, and passions to market opportunities and get you started on your selected path. Nedbank's slogan is "Make things happen." This applies not only to the bank, but to each of you in your own lives. So use the valuable information you will receive today to plan out your own future and make it happen. If you plan carefully, set goals for yourself, and then work hard to achieve these, you can be anything you want to be. Take every opportunity you have and don't be afraid to be ambitious. Who knows, you may even be the CEO of Nedbank one day, or maybe You have already set your goals even higher.
Keep it moving, make sure that we take it to the top.
Now, before any massive or minute structure is built, someone needs to decide how it will look. With us now to talk more about this aesthetic viewpoint is Philippa Tumbuweni.
Philippa has the Masters in Architecture from the University of Pretoria. She has both professional design experience and is also a senior lecturer at the University of Johannesburg's Department of Design and Architecture.
Welcome.
Philippa.
Thank you.
Now, you're an architect.
Yes.
What exactly does an architect do?
Architects design spaces. By that I mean the actual physical building you see is merely an envelope that then encloses that space. So what we actually do is design space.
Wow. Now, Philippa, when you design a building, you need to make sure that it looks good, and of course, it should not fall down. So you need to be creative and technical at the same time. Is that difficult?
Not really. I mean, architectural training is quite rigorous, and because of the functioning of buildings, of spaces, the two then come together. So I wouldn't say one is more important than the other. They sort of work together to come up with what you see as a building.
Yeah, now you're also a lecturer, like I mentioned before, at in the School of Architecture at UJ. Can you give us an overview of the degree?
UJ has got a Part 1 accreditation, which means you start off with the first 3 years undergrad, which is a diploma, and then you move on to the BTech, which is a degree, and then we have an MTech now, which is also a degree. That in total is 5 years of studying, and then you'd need to then potentially work for 2 years before you can register as an architect. But 5 years sounds like a lot, but the second year is actually a working year, so you spend most of your time in second year in architectural practice, working and getting experience in an office, and you then come back for your third year.
Oh, okay. Now, Philippa, can you study further? Are there any postgraduate specializations?
Yes, they are. I mean, if you want to go beyond a master's degree, then you're looking at a doctorate. But with a master's in architecture, you can then specialize either in, say, facade architecture, you could specialize in structures, in construction, in project management, in project financing, property development. So there's a whole lot of things you can do with an architectural degree in terms of specialization.
And now, what are some of the challenges that our students face?
Honestly, interest. I think a lot of people think it's quite glamorous to be an architect, and it's a lot of hard work. It needs a lot of dedication, and they get there, and the problem is actually interest, because they have what I call a superficial interest. I mean, to study architecture, you literally have, that has to be the most important thing in your life for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. Now, what kind of companies employ architects?
Architectural companies, predominantly, obviously. You do get some of the bigger construction companies that employ architects. You get engineering firms that employ architects. But interestingly enough, I could be wrong, but about 50% of people that study architecture end up doing something else. So architecture is a very good degree, because what we teach in architecture is basically lateral problem solving. So you have a lot of people that end up in publishing, in set design, in lighting, in some of them in music. Pink Floyd were architects. I think Seal also studied architecture. You get a lot of the editors who are architects. So architecture is very broad in terms of what you can do with it, but predominantly architectural firms.
Now, Philippa, this must be a big responsibility to design buildings that are going to be around for years. I mean, is there a sense of reward to take a project from inception to completion?
Yes, but I think the first thing an architect feels is relief, that the project's over, which is usually a bit of a hassle. But I'll just give you, to answer that, I'll talk about my first experience when I walked into the first space I ever designed. And it's, after everyone's sort of gone off-site, it's the closest that I've ever felt in terms of to God. I mean, you're standing in a space that a few months ago was a sketch, was an idea, the dust has settled, the paint is up, the contractors are off-site, the banks are off your back, the client's finally happy, and you stand in that space, and it's quite incredible. I always get goosebumps every time I think about that time.
That's amazing. It's like a beautiful feeling. Wow. Now, what are some of the most celebrated architectural structures in South Africa?
Well, at the moment, obviously, it's the stadiums. And with all of the soccer that was going on, I mean, the stadiums were quite something, and they've been actually highlighted in various international magazines, especially Soccer City and the stadium in Durban and the one in Cape Town. There is also quite a few good buildings in Johannesburg. You have Constitutional Court, done by Andrew Macon, which is an incredible building. You have the Apartheid Museum, which has been written about ad nauseum by Mashabane Rose. We also have, last year, a South African architect won an international award at the Barcelona Architectural Festival, Peter Rich, for his project in Mapumbugwe, which is like a cultural center in, I think it's in Limpopo. So there is quite a lot of architectural projects in South Africa that are starting to get international recognition, which is quite good.
Absolutely amazing, Philippa. Now, are there any specific things that a person should be good at in order to pursue a career in architecture?
Well, I think for most universities, you need to have maths as a subject for matric. Drawing is always a good thing to have, even though it's not an absolute requirement. And also, I mean, you need to be diligent and observant.
Yeah. And what personal qualities make for a successful architect?
Interest, but I think even above interest, now that I think about it, is curiosity. You have to be curious about where you live, how you move around where you live, people you interact with, how you interact with them, how the spaces determine how those interactions happen. Curiosity becomes a big or a good quality to have. You have to be inquisitive.
Yeah. Wow, thank you very much. That was awesome, eh?
Great stuff.
Thanks, Philippa.
Thank you.
Keep it moving, make sure that we take it to the top.
Now let's see if you can solve this.
Is the following statement true or false?
To become an engineer, you need mathematics as a subject at school. The answer coming up just a little later.
Keep it moving, make sure that we take it to the top.
Does heavy-duty machinery, pipes and massive steel structures get you excited? Well, Mark van Reineveld is in the sphere of construction that deals with all sorts of these things. Now, Mark studied engineering at UCT and BITS and has since become a professional engineer in both South Africa and Britain.
Yes, and as a civil engineer, Mark is particularly involved in building roads and bridges. He has a special interest in the design of facilities for developing communities and has researched, consulted and published several books on this subject.
Welcome.
Mark.
Thank you.
Now, you're a civil engineer. How are civil engineers different from other engineers?
Well, they're quite similar to other engineers. They enjoy problem solving. They enjoy doing quite practical things. Practical things means that you can see the results of what you do. And perhaps civil engineers, it certainly was one of the earlier of the engineering disciplines that was developed, and is one of the ones that's probably broader, because we deal with providing people's basic needs and a platform for the economy to grow, roads and bridges and dams and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Now, Mark, are there different types of civil engineers?
Yes, there are three different ways you can look at it. The one, we look at different groupings of engineering infrastructure. So physical infrastructure is what we provide. And the one is, as you've said, transport and communications, so it would be roads and bridges and railway lines and airports. And then we have water and waste related things. And then we tend to have structures and large public buildings. So Soccer City, Gautrain, some of these large structures and public buildings.
Okay, so where could you work as a civil engineer?
Anywhere in the world. There's lots and lots of opportunity in South Africa. We need lots and lots of things that civil engineers provide, and anywhere in the world, because you need those things.
Sounds interesting. So tell us about some of your most interesting projects that you've worked on.
Okay, I think the first project I worked on was a roads project on the Garden Route from Cape Town. And I think the first project is always special. You start to see, it was a large rural freeway. That was a very nice project. And then a project that meant a lot to me was we went and provided water supply to a clinic in Bushbuck Ridge area. And we had a group of American students that we brought over hosted by the South African students, and provided this water to the clinic that hadn't had clinic water before. That's very satisfying to do something like that. And then more recently, I work in engineering education of developing people, which I really enjoy. And also some work in infrastructure planning, so looking at cities, looking at what shape of cities we should have. So there's huge variety and huge interest.
Yeah.
Now, you're a hard-working man, Mark. Now, I want to know, so what are some of the studies that you'd have to go through in order to become a qualified civil engineer, and how hard or easy is it to get that degree?
Okay. Anything that's worth doing is never easy. It means that you really need to put some effort into it, but that's great. You enjoy it and you do it well. You need to qualify. You need to get a qualification to do that. And in South Africa, we have a suite of 3 different qualifications. Essentially, there's a diploma qualification, there's to become a technician, or a slightly longer qualification, a technologist, or a 4-year professional degree to become a professional engineer. So there's a range of qualifications.
Yeah, now can you tell me about some of the subjects one would cover during the studies?
Okay, I think to be an engineer, and a civil engineer in particular, you need, first of all, you need to enjoy maths and science-related things. So you need to be comfortable with that. You need to do mathematics and not just maths lit at school. That's very important. That is very important. So when you come into university or University of Technology to study, you would normally have a foundation of maths and science. That's what we put in first, with some other subjects, so sort of foundation of maths and science. And then we go on and do the proper civil engineering subjects related to those disciplines. So it might be structures, or soils, ground engineering, how you do soils, or water. There are various disciplines like that related to the provision of that infrastructure.
Yeah, and how long does it take to actually qualify as a civil engineer?
Well, your initial qualification, there are 2 parts to it. Initial qualification at university or University of University of Technology would, as I said, formal studies 2, 3 or 4 years. But then beyond that, you need either to go and do some work integrated learning, or some work in practice, which is supervised by others. So there's a longer training period. We call it a stage 1 and a stage 2 training period, until you're a fully fledged engineer to take responsibility for things in practice.
Okay.
Beautiful. Now, Mr. Reineveld, would you say that engineering is a man's job, or are ladies also welcome?
We prefer having women around. No, it's absolutely. It's there's men and women in the profession, and because of that variety, there's huge variety. You can, if you want to go into sort of heavy construction machinery and that sort of thing, you can do that. If you want to go into, how can I say, slightly more people-related things in engineering, you can do that. So there's a range, men or women, there's a range, and you're welcome to all of those things.
Thank you, thank you. Now I want to know about the best and the worst aspects of your job.
Well, it's easier to think of the best aspects.
Yeah.
The best aspect, I think, is to be able to be involved in something from the planning through to seeing it being built and implemented. That's very satisfying. I think to be able to see the results of what you've done and to feel that that's making a contribution to your world around you, I think that's very satisfying. So I was thinking, I think probably the worst thing is when you can't see that happen. So is where if you're frustrated or something. But those are the best things.
Yeah.
It's very tangible. It's very satisfying.
Tell me something, Mark. Are there job opportunities out there for a civil engineer?
Yes, there's lots. There's lots. I think I need to come back a step and say that in South Africa, we just have a huge need for engineers. You know, if we compare ourselves to other countries, we've got some making up to do. The new government, or the government in this country, is pursuing infrastructure provision, is really pursuing those things. We need people. So in South Africa, we really do need people. But worldwide, you can imagine, these things are needed no matter what stage of development you're at. You keep on going, you need stuff. You know, economies go up and down, but these things are basic. We need them.
Now, Mark, what do you think the stumbling blocks are for young school leavers entering the profession?
I think the first thing is that they must know about civil engineering, and this opportunity here is a wonderful opportunity for people to know more what it is and to find out about it. So that's the first thing, I think, to know. The second thing, I think, is that students at school need to be taking the right subjects at school. That's mathematics, not mathematics literacy to do the engineering. You need to do that. You need to get good marks for those. You can find out what those are, but you need to get reasonable marks for those and going forward. So I think those would be some of the basic building blocks, but they're the things that you would put in place if you want to go forward.
Yes, and what personal qualities and skills would one need to become a really successful civil engineer?
People who enjoy this kind of things would gravitate towards it. I think if you enjoy seeing those kind of practical things and realizing things and have a measure of creativity, then those are the things you're going to gravitate towards. I do think that you need to be not afraid of hard work, but we've talked about that. That's not a problem. Hard work, it's good. You enjoy it. But you need to apply yourself and be persistent in that. And I think you've really got to want to problem solve. You want to get to persevere and get to the bottom of things and make a contribution. I think it is a public contribution that you're making, so you've got to want to do that. But those are the things, if you enjoy that, you'll love civil engineering.
Yeah, so you must be inquisitive, like me.
Yes.
Thank you, Mark.
Thanks for joining us, Mark.
Thank you.
Make sure that we take it to the top.
After the break, we talk to a quantity surveyor and a project manager about what it takes to make it on the job.
All of that right here on My Future, My Career, proudly brought to you by Nedbank. You don't want to miss it.
Make sure that we take it to the top.
Our course wasn't perfectly trimmed. There were no greenkeepers, or sprinklers, or even grass for that matter. On our course, the hazards were real. Some might say it wasn't a course at all. But when you've played where we have, you know the true value of those who can make things happen. Nedbank.
Make sure that we take it to the top.
Before the break, we wanted to know whether the following statement was true or false. To become an engineer, you need mathematics as a subject at school.
And I've got the answer. Do you know what the answer is? Do you know what the answer is? Cool. Well, I've got the answer. I'm going to give it to you. The answer is indeed true, okay? Maths, not maths literacy, is very important for engineering.
But Paul, there are many other jobs in construction that don't need maths buffs. I mean, let's find out from our next guest.
Yeah, let's.
Make sure that we take it to the top.
With us now are Mme Mapefo Mokhodi and Dr. Twala.
As a quantity surveyor, Mme Mapefo Mokhodi knows how to balance quality and cost. She has worked on big construction projects and has moved from employee to partner and director, and now has entered academia as a lecturer at UJ.
Dr. Wellington Didipuku Twala is a senior lecturer and master's program coordinator at the Department of Construction Management and Quantity Surveying, University of Johannesburg. He is also the founding director of Insika Project Management Services, a consulting firm of professional project managers, health and safety and quantity surveyors. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mme Mapefo, you're a quantity surveyor. That sounds very technical. So can you just tell me a bit more about what your job entails?
A quantity surveyor is more like a construction accountant. Before a client could actually even think about doing a project, they have to know how much it's going to cost. And the quantity surveyor is the right person to go to, because the quantity surveyor is the one that will tell the client the amount of money that is required. The quantity surveyor helps the client to budget the money so that the client knows how much is required for them in order to take out a project.
Now, Mme Mapefo, you work out the cost of the construction, and then you also work on the cost whilst the building is going up. And now, it sounds like a lot of things that you're doing, and you also do the schedule, by the way. So is it the tricky balancing act? What skills do you need? Do you need maths, perhaps?
Definitely. Before you enter the quantity surveying profession, you must have maths and you must have physics. Now, the quantity surveyor works together with the design team. The design team is the architect and the engineers. They design, and the quantity surveyor becomes a cost advisor. As the design is going on, then they talk to the quantity surveyor to find out if there are any other cost alternatives that they can come up with when they are busy designing. Mm-hmm. The reason for that is so that they can accommodate the client's budget.
So how exactly does a quantity surveyor calculate the cost?
The quantity surveyor needs plans from the architect. The architect will give the quantity surveyor a sketch plan at the beginning, because the quantity surveyor must work out a budget first, okay? And once the quantity surveyor has worked out a budget and the client is happy, then we can do what we call tender documentation, and then we can put the document out on tender for the contractors to come and collect, give us the price, and then we will select the appropriate contractor. So for the quantity surveyor to work out the cost, we need plans from the architect and from the engineers.
Okay, and what training does one need to qualify as a quantity surveyor?
You need to go to a tertiary institution, you need to do a quantity surveying degree or a quantity surveying diploma. You do building diploma, and then you proceed to do BTech in quantity surveying. You qualify as a quantity surveyor, but not a professional quantity surveyor. So you cannot just go out there once you qualify and call yourself a quantity surveyor. What you need to do is, after your qualification, you need to go and do what we call in-service training. If you have a degree, in-service training will take you 3 years, that's degree and honors. If you just have a 3-year degree, it will take you 4 years. If you have a BTech, it will take you 5 years. If you have a diploma, it will take you 6 years. And during that period, you have to fill in the logbooks. You must show that you are actually acquiring experience in that field. And after that in-service training period, you apply to the Council for the Quantity Surveying Profession. You go for what you call an assessment of professional competence. Only once you have passed that, then you can be called a quantity surveyor. Then you are a professional quantity surveyor, and you can call yourself such. And then the client can then start to give you jobs, because now they have confidence that you have the competence to handle their budget.
Dr. Twala, you are a project manager in construction. What exactly does your job entail?
So my role as a project manager, I need to coordinate the professional team in order to be able to produce a successful project. So if I can just give you a little bit of a background. So in order to be able to deliver a successful project, you need different professional teams. So for example, you need a quantity surveyor, must be there. You need a civil engineer, structural engineer, your architect. Depending on the nature of the project, what will actually happen, the project manager will be an overall person who's going to coordinate to make sure that the quantity surveyor is able to deliver on the particular activities, in fact, which is supposed to make sure that at the end of the day, the particular project, is successful.
Doctor, it sounds like you have to be very organized in order to pull this one off.
Yeah.
Is it stressful?
Basically, in terms of stressful, if you appoint a team, a professional team that is not competent in terms of your work, in fact, it's going to be stressful.
Yeah.
But one of the particular things that you need to be able to have, you must have competency in terms of financial competency. You must be able to manage your time very well. You must also be able to deal with the issue of quality. Because remember, quality is a specification. If a client gives you a particular project to manage, you need to make sure that at the end of the day, that particular specification, that the clients want, at the end of the day, we are able to make sure that the client will get the specification at the end of the day.
Because the client is always right.
You know that. Now, what training would you say a person needs to qualify as a project manager?
In order to qualify as a project manager, you have got 2 streams that you can go through. You can go through a diploma in building, and then after that, you can do a BTech in construction management, or you can go the route of a BSc in construction management. What will happen after that? You need to go, because once you've qualified, either in terms of a diploma or having a BSc in construction management, it doesn't make you a project manager. So once you've got a BSc in construction management, you need to do your internship. It means you must work under a qualified project manager for a period of 3 years. So if you've got a diploma, you must work under a qualified project manager for a period of 8 years. So the more you take at the university, the more time you take at the university, so the lesser time you're going to take to qualify, as a professional project manager.
What's the best part about your job?
So in terms of the purpose of the project, as a project manager, is when a particular project is delivered successfully. It must comply to 3 things. It must be delivered on time, so within the budget. So the other thing, the project must meet the specification, that is quality. So at the end of the day, if you combine those particular 3 things, so it makes me happy as a project manager.
Still talking about a production manager, what qualities would one need to be a successful project manager?
So in order to be able to be a successful project manager, what you need to do, one of the things that you must know is in terms of planning. You must be a good planner. So you must understand, your scheduling. You must be a good communicator. So at the end of the day, what you need to do, you bring different skills. As a project manager, you need to have the hard technical skill and the soft skills because you deal with different professional teams. Because the project manager, we represent the client.
Now, we've been speaking about the client a lot. So what type of companies would hire a quantity surveyor?
We would call them professional companies, but what actually happens is that you, as a professional quantity surveyor, after having been registered, after having passed your assessment of professional competence, you can then go and have your own company. You go and you register a company as a professional quantity surveyor, and you offer quantity surveying services. That's the kind of company.
Yeah.
And that is the kind of company that other youngsters, when they graduate, they can go to that kind of company and work under a registered professional quantity surveyor.
Okay.
And that is a route to registering as professionals themselves.
Yeah.
So we've clarified that you do work closely with a quantity surveyor. Who else do you work closely with on site?
Basically, it's different professional teams, as I've alluded before, like your architect, so like your civil engineer, your structural engineer, your water engineer, your surveyors, your town planners. It will depend upon the nature of the project. In some other project, you're going to have, a huge, professional team.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, in closing, what advice do you have for students who want to get into your profession? Let me start with you.
My advice is, firstly, you need to make sure that you make the right choice. The way of making the right choice is going for the right career guidance. And if you're in your matric, you must make sure that you do maths and you do physics. Those are the two prerequisites. If you don't have maths and physics, you cannot do a diploma or a degree in quantity surveying.
Nice one, Mema Pifo. Now, Doctor, what's your advice for people that want to enter into your profession?
Yeah, so in terms of my advice, I'm going to just advise young people to say in South Africa, we don't have enough qualified project managers. So we need you. We need young people to enter this profession. As some of us, we're going to go on pension very soon. So we need people who are going to take over just from us. Yeah. So in terms of the fundamentals, you need to be able to have your maths and science. So those are the fundamentals that you're supposed to have. And another thing that I also need to add, in terms of the different universities, either you want to do a diploma or you want to do a degree, basically there are scholarships and bursaries for South African students. So therefore, there must be no student who is there who say he can't go to university. He or she have passed very well because there's no money. So at the end of the day, they should approach the different universities to find about the opportunities, which are there. Another thing, we also have got different companies which are offering bursaries and scholarship.
Dr. Mema Pifo, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Need a bit of inspiration to make your career choice? Let's hear what the fairy godmother has to say.
My name is Donna McCallum, and I am a fantastically fabulous and magical fairy godmother. In each of these episodes, I will be covering one of the 10 tips in more detail. And just so that you don't miss out, here are the 10 tips. Tip number 1, be authentic. Tip 2, play to your strengths. Tip 3, have fun. Do what you love and love what you do. Tip 4, it's your choice. Tip 5, learn to learn. Tip number 6 is dream big. Tip number 7, take action. Tip number 8, overcome your fears. Tip 9, build support around you. And tip 10, gratitude. Today's tip is all about dreaming big. The people who are successful in life are the people who dream big and then are not afraid to do it. Look at someone like Mark Shuttleworth. Before he was 30, he had made millions and was the first African to travel into space. He was young, he had a big dream, and many people thought he was crazy, but he did it anyway. So write down your strengths, your talents, your passions, and then create a big dream out of those. When you think of your big dream, it'll ignite and delight and excite you, and it may make you feel scared all at the same time. But big dreams are wild and crazy and may seem almost impossible. But here's a little secret. If you can dream it, then you can do it. No person is ever sent a dream or a vision that they can't accomplish. You just need to work on your dream, step by step, to make it happen. Don't worry if you can't see all the steps or you don't know how it's going to happen. No person is ever sent a vision or a dream that they can't accomplish. You just need to work on your dream, step by step, to make it happen. Don't worry if you can't see all the steps or you don't know how it's all going to happen. No person who's ever done anything great knew how they were going to do it. They just knew that they were going to do it. Nelson Mandela did not know how he was going to create a free and fair and democratic South Africa, but he had a big dream, he had faith that he was going to do it, even though for 40 years it looked like he was failing. But because he kept holding onto the dream, eventually it came true. There are loads of examples in life of people who are incredibly successful because they love what they do, they dream big, and then they do it. So no matter what your friends, teachers, or parents say, keep dreaming big.
Make sure that we take it to the top.
Ferdy Festa has been involved in academia for the last 24 years, and he's currently the head of the Department of Construction Management and Quantity Surveying.
Yes, Ferdy has not only sat behind a desk, but has been on the set of many dusty construction sites. He's both a registered construction project manager and a qualified quantity surveyor, and has been involved in construction as a construction manager, project manager, quantity surveyor, and buyer. What haven't you done, Ferdy? What haven't you done?
I never had a baby yet.
Now, Ferdy, earlier we spoke to a project manager. Now we want to know what's the difference between a project manager and a construction manager.
Okay, now you must understand that in South Africa, there is a distinct difference. In South Africa, we have a council called the South African Council for the Project and Construction Management Professions, which registers construction managers and project managers because it recognizes it as two different professions. The name project manager may be used by contractors for somebody who runs a site. Some people call him a site agent, some people call him a project manager. But a construction project manager in South Africa is the person who's hired by the client. And the client puts his trust in that person to make sure that his building happens the way he wants it to be built. For example, take Sun City, take the Palace at the Lost City. A project manager, Saul Kersner, hired Charles Israelite, make this happen. And then a contractor would be appointed, and the person who would run the project is your construction manager. The person that at the end of the day, the project is done, they hand over a completed project. That's the job of a construction manager.
Okay, now do you need formal training or can you become a construction manager through work experience?
There are many very successful construction managers in this country who have come through the trades, were without any formal training. And they are excellent people. But for every one construction manager that has come through the trades, there are 40 that have messed up big time. We, in South Africa, and of course, naturally being an academic, would want the person that comes to a site, as a construction site, to be formally trained at one of the universities or University of Technology, and we want that person to know all the tricks before he walks onto site. The bag is only completed on site, but he walks on the site with a bag of tricks already. And unfortunately, if you come through the trades, you miss some of the very important learning bits and pieces that you only get in a classroom and under the guidance of a decent instructor stroke lecturer.
Now, tell us more about the different professionals and artisans that you've worked with as a construction manager.
Okay, number one would be the project manager in today's construction world. Now, the architects used to be what we call the principal agent, but that has moved over to a professional project manager who would coordinate all the professionals. Then you get your architect, then you get your quantity surveyor, then you get your engineers, your civil engineer, your electrical engineer, your mechanical engineer, and any other type of engineer that you need for the type of project that you are doing. For example, if you're building Mosgas, you would not have a project manager who holds a degree in building construction. You would have a project manager who holds a degree in chemical engineering as your project manager. So those are the cluster of consultants and professionals that we work with. Naturally, the people on site, the actual tradesmen, artisans, your bricklayers, your plasterers, your tilers, your carpenters, those are the people, those were the actual trades. Today, they are kind of broken down into little pieces. So a guy would be a ceiling fixer. And his whole job is to fix ceilings, and, other than being a carpenter. But those are your people, your bricklayer, plasterer, tiler, and those type of people are the people we work with on site.
Okay, now what is a subcontractor?
A subcontractor is a contractor in his own right, but is chosen either because of his field of speciality or because of his ability to run a business in a different form. If you look around you, you would see these lightings and these bulkheads and things around to make up the studio. That is a specialist subcontractor who would come in here and build the studio. Outside, you'll see there's a spectacular staircase. That is be a specialist subcontractor who would make up that staircase. And then there's ceiling subcontractors. Their speciality is to put in ceilings, do fancy ceiling work in malls and those kind of places. Electrical subcontractors, they are all contractors in their own right, but their job is come in, do the electrics, get out. Plumbers, and you will notice all the subcontractors are very specialized people. Take out the subcontractors, your plumbers, your electricians, your lift mechanics and those people, you don't have the services. So the subcontractor does that which the contractor is not a specialist in.
Great stuff. Now, Mr. Fester, is construction management rewarding?
If you think about the reward being the size of your pay packet, it definitely is. If you get into the right company at the right time and work hard, it's a tiring job, but it's very rewarding because the one thing that we love in construction, when a client looks at this building and says, I love it, it's what I wanted. Those are the rewards of being a construction manager.
Yeah, now you're mentioning the rewards. I want to know about the challenges that you face in your job.
The challenges. We deal with the most unqualified workforce in the land. They are even more unqualified than the mining sector. That's a major, major problem. So trying to interpret your work instruction to the people that you're working with is very, very hard. And the cultures are different throughout the country, throughout the world. And that's what makes the job hard, because of the communication breakdowns that you receive at many points.
What does one need to become a successful construction manager?
Number one, a big mouth. People need to listen.
Big mouth?
A big mouth.
Like literally.
Wow, listen to me. That's what you need.
Yeah.
Because you cannot be a squeaky little mouse. People will ignore you. You need to be able to go onto a construction site. You must have a presence. Even if you're a little fellow, but you must have a presence. You must be able to stand up straight, and you must be able to say, listen, I am speaking now, follow my instructions. That is the primary. Once you have that ability that people know you are in charge.
And you have all those qualities. Hello. Now, what kind of companies hire construction managers?
Construction managers are hired by every single building contractor. They all need construction managers of some sort or another. Whether it is a guy with a national diploma, because they're building smaller type of projects, or a guy with a BTEC or BSc building bigger type of projects. The construction managers are hired by every single construction company in the country. And that is primarily where our people find work. If you're good enough, and you have made your contacts, if you've got the good contacts, people respect you, you can become a construction management consultant.
Wow. Now, I'm just thrown away. It's amazing. Now, what advice do you have to people watching now that want to become successful construction managers like yourself?
Maths, physics, English.
Maths, physics, English.
That's it.
Very important.
You don't even consider getting anywhere without maths, physics, English. We are looking at minimums of 60%. In actual fact, if you want to make it, you need 60% in maths, 60% in physics, and in English. And then we really don't mind what the other subjects that you bring to the party. But that is what we're looking for: people that are good at maths, that are good at physics, and can speak and write properly.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks
very much.
Yeah.
Make sure that we take it to the top.
Before we go to the break, let's give our brain some exercise with this brain teaser.
Now, two men working at a construction site were pretty mad at each other and decided to confront one another, okay? The stronger man said, "See that wheelbarrow? I'm willing to bet 1,000 rands that anything you can wheel to that cone and back, I can wheel twice as far."
The other man shook his hand whilst formulating a plan. He looked at the objects lying around, a pile of 400 bricks, a steel beam, and a stack of 10 bags of concrete mix. He thought for a while and then finalized his plan. "All right," he said, and chose his object.
Now, that night, the strong man went home very bleak and 1,000 rands poorer. What was the weaker man's object? Think about it. The answer coming up after this.
Make sure that we take it to the top.
Up next, love wires, pulsing currents, and lighting up a situation. Mark Mfigwe will tell us more.
And later, Richard Evans will give us the lowdown on how a massive construction project comes together.
Yes, so see you after this.
Make sure that we take it to the top.
It's happened 600 times in the last century alone. When spiraling winds gather up water masses, it's a strange storm that follows. In extraordinary times, it's your approach that matters. Nedbank Capital.
Make sure that we take it to the top.
The show has been amazing so far, and we trust that you're enjoying it. We've had a quantity surveyor, project manager, construction manager, a civil engineer, an architect, and loads more. And now we're chilling with another guy.
Absolutely shocking stuff. Now, Mike Mfigwe grew up in a little village called Jericho, next to Brits in the Northwest. And since he completed school in 1986, has not stopped studying. He started off with a BA degree, dabbled in education, industrial relations, and electrical estimating and tendering, and is currently in his final year of studies towards an LLB with UNISA.
That is awesome. Now, Mark is also the first vice president of the ECA and HR director of Standard Electrical and managing director of Trouble Law Electrical, and sits on the bargaining council for the electrical contracting industry, NEC, and Energy CETA board. Amazing achievements. Well done, Mark.
Thank you.
Cool. Now, electricians, do all the wiring and they connect buildings to power. And I'm guessing there's more to the job than just putting up lights. So what are the responsibilities of electricians on a construction site?
Yeah, the responsibilities are huge. I mean, what you see of an electrician's work, it's probably about 20% of what he has done. Most of it is invisible. Most of it is behind concrete. Most of it is behind walls. Most of it is on top of ceilings, on the ground. And basically what you see is limited stuff. All you see is light fittings, you see plugs, and that's effectively what you see. You see what you are able to use. You probably see a distribution board. But what is there for an electrician to do is that firstly, the electrician gets a design of the job. Just like buildings get designs with architectural buildings, so the electrics gets designed by electrical engineers, gets given to an electrician, and the electricians get the job done in line with the design. The design is sensitive to a couple of things. One, aesthetics. In other words, it must look good. Two, and that's the most important thing, it needs to be safe, because most of the people that use electrics are ignorant about its danger. You said shocking stuff. It will be something that will be generally understood by every person, that it is shocking, but it's only shocking to the extent that you're not using it the way it is supposed to be used, or because the electrician has not done it the way it is supposed to be done. It is, it is controlled by law. It is an animal of statute. The Occupational Health and Safety Act speaks to the way in which you do electrics. And so, yeah, you've got the responsibility to yourself as you are installing it, to the people that will be viewing the thing from an aesthetic point of view, because every client wants their building to look good. You have got a responsibility towards members of the public who would have to use it with confidence, knowing that it is actually safe to use.
Now, Mark, you mentioned it's not just lights and plugs.
Yeah.
So what does the physical work entail?
Well, the physical work entails lots of things. Firstly, the guys would have to install wireways. Wireways are the things on which the wires are going to be moving through. Your conduits, your cable trays, your pin-on, all those things. The wires are going to move through those things in order to transfer this energy to the plugs, to the lights, but they will have to take that energy from the distribution boards. So the distribution boards are also going to have to be installed by the electricians. They are going to, in creating the wireways, they are going to chase through walls and make sure that after the chasing through the wall, they are able to put it together nicely again, such that it looks nice on the eye. They will install the light fittings, which is the stuff that you see. They will install the plugs, which is your final fixes that people are able to see. They will ensure that it complies with the regulations. They will ensure that it complies with the drawings and the specifications. And an electrician would then have to come through and look at everything from the point of view of law and say, I can give you a COC. A COC means that it is safe to use.
Now, Mark, it sounds like you really need to know what you're doing when you're there.
Yeah.
Now, what sort of training would one need?
In reality, you go through, I can quickly think about 4 ways in which you can get to become an electrician. Given the history of this land, some people, you pick them up, they're looking for work, you employ in your business, and you train them within the business, starting from being an electrical assistant to becoming an electrical contracting operative level 1, level 2, level 3, and then you take them through to do trade tests, and they become electricians. So those have studied or learned with their hands from experienced other people within the business. So that's the one way in which you can become an electrician. Now you can realize that this guy hasn't necessarily gone to any formal schooling. All he is an able-bodied person that probably has got a matric, got a little chance, an opportunity to work within an electrical contracting business, and was able to work his way up. It takes a little bit of time to do it that way because you're competing with others that are actually working with you in the same space. Then there's formal education, where you go to Technikon, study electrical engineering, come into the electrical field, get experience. With the necessary experience, you then go and do your trade test. You are an artisan, you do your installation rules, and there you go. You are an electrician, and you can either go on and become an electrical contracting businessman, like I am, or become an employee of a risk-taking businessman.
Now, would you say to become an electrician, do you need to be a member of the Electrical Contractors Association?
Well, you don't have to, but it is not very clever not to be. The Electrical Contracting Association is a business association. In other words, it's an association of electrical contracting business people. They get together and their common interests are taken care of there. And there is strength in numbers, there is strength in similarly aimed people getting together to protect the interest of the game. And electricians are very proud of their trade. In fact, if you're not proud of that trade, don't come in there because it will not be very accommodating of you. It is an organization that ensures that you don't cut corners, that clients can, when you have got a badge of that organization on a van, the client can have confidence that you are from a credible organization and you are a proud and credible electrician.
Yeah, now what kind of jobs are available for qualified electricians?
Okay. you can be an installation electrician. An installation electrician means that here's a building, you start the installation of all the things I've talked about: cables, wireways, lights, plugs, distribution boards, everything. And then you are an installation electrician. Other people work below you and you guide how they are going to actually do their work. You are responsible for their quality. Now that is where you are an installation electrician. But there are other fields. You can become a quantity surveyor within the electrical field. Because you understand the electrics, you can be able to go in and extract the sort of quantities that electricians have been able to use on the job, and therefore guide the claim of the company at the end of the month so as it is able to invoice the client correctly without robbing the client, but also without losing the money on the job. That is when you are a quantity surveyor. You move into other fields, electrical contracting management, where you can then be a manager of the electrical side of a construction site, which means that you are responsible for everything quality, you are responsible for project management, that the thing is delivered on time, that if you are doing a specific shop and they want to start trading on the 1st of November, that come the 1st of November, they are trading. Because you have done your job, it's done, it's finished, and you can point it out at people and say, that's the job, it's done, signed off, handed over to the client, happiness, I'm paid. Yeah. You can be a marketer, where I fit in very well. Can be a marketer, go to clients, look for work, and you can become an employer of people. Like where I am, we employ about 350 people.
Yes.
That's what you do.
And what personal skills would a person need to become a very successful electrician?
Okay. You need to be sensitive to the seriousness of the electrical game. You should understand that it is something that is needed. When there is no electrics, everybody notices. This show doesn't happen.
Yes.
If there's no electrics. So you need to understand the importance of the field that you are in, that it is more than just about you doing your work. It's about its impact on other people. I can tell you now, without any shadow of a doubt, that lack of or absence of electrics would kill an economy of any country. So you should have a huge sense of responsibility and know that it is not just about you, it's about the common good. But attention to detail, seriousness about safety, not just of the installation, but of the people that are going to use it beyond the times that you have left there. You should know that you're leaving a legacy. When I walk past and I look at Michelangelo Towers, I said, that's the job that we did. To others, it's a restaurant where they can go and eat.
Now, quick word of advice to people who are watching and want to be aspiring electricians.
It is an exciting career. I moved into that game because you want to do something that is beyond just being a consumer. It gives you an opportunity to build this country. Okay, so the things that you should do, you need to identify. I've touched on a number of things, but you need to identify institutions that will be able to offer you the type of skills that I've talked about today. What you need to do in order to be able to access those institutions or companies that will offer you these things. Yes. Okay, access those, and you can access the Electrical Contractors Association on the ECA website. You can access them at their offices, and all the major electrical contracting companies are members of the ECA. Only little small ones that haven't really identified the impact of that association. So you will get access to these companies in that fashion, and you will end up being an electrician if you apply yourself well.
Yeah. Beautiful stuff. Shocking news from Michael Kigwe. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Mark.
Keep it moving, make sure that we take it to the top.
So before the break, we wanted to know the answer to this brain teaser. two men working at a construction site were pretty mad at each other and decided to confront one another. The stronger man said, "See that wheelbarrow? I'm willing to bet 1,000 rands that anything you can wheel to that cone and back, I can wheel twice as far."
The other man shook his hand whilst formulating a plan. He looked at all the objects lying around, a pile of 400 bricks, a steel beam, and a stack of 10 bags of concrete mix. Well, he thought for a while and then finalized the plan. "All right," he said, and revealed his object.
That night, the strong man went home very bleak and 1,000 rand poorer. What was the weaker man's object? Okay, so Zola, you've got the answer?
No, I don't have the answer.
No, but I thought you had the answer.
I thought you had the answer.
Do you have the answer?
Well, what's the answer? Tell the people.
Okay, fine. I'm the only intelligent one here, so of course I have the answer. The answer is the weaker man looked the strong man right in the eye and said, "Get in."
Keep it moving, make sure that we take it to the top.
Our next guest is Richard Evans. He's a registered professional civil engineer who graduated from WITS in 1989. He has worked on construction projects in South Africa and its neighboring countries, covering roads, earthworks, pipelines, mining, railways, bridges, and so much more.
He's a contracts director at Group 5 Construction and has been involved in an engineering and leadership role in some of the most high-profile construction projects associated with the 2010 World Cup.
Yes, now Richard will take us through the construction of the brand new King Shaka Airport in Durban, highlighting the different professionals that were needed to make it happen. So let's hear it from Mr. Richard Evans.
Make sure that we take it to the top.
As we all know, the construction industry is a vastly diverse place with a number of different entities that make it up. Different career paths, different procedures, different companies are involved. And to try to demonstrate some of this, we've chosen a case study at the King Shaka International Airport. Now, as people would know, it's a new airport that's been constructed just north of Durban and recently opened just prior to the World Cup. We're going to use that today as a case study to try to demonstrate why all the disciplines that are associated eventually make up a successful project. Now, to start off with, we're going to be talking about the client. The client in this particular case being the Airports Company of South Africa. The Airports Company of South Africa some time back decided that they needed to upgrade the capacity of this particular airport, and they could not do that with the existing facility, which is the old Louis Botha and Durban International Airport. The site of the old Durban Airport at Louis Botha was deemed to be unfit for the current international aviation standards, including the size of the aircraft that were required to land there. A bold decision was taken by the Airports Company of South Africa to move the airport to a place just west of La Mercy, about 30 kilometers north of Durban. This is the particular project that we'll be using as a case study to demonstrate the various elements of the construction project. The client decided that it needed such and such a facility that could handle so many aeroplanes, so many people, traffic, easy access, etc., that took account of local inhabitants, access from roads and so on and so forth. At that point, they engaged with the first element that I want to discuss today, and that is the architects. The role of the architects is to take a conceptual design developed in conjunction with the client, as we've said, the Airports Company of South Africa, and turn it into a real working life project. Now, they do that by taking a number of factors into account, including geographical location, ease of access by pedestrians, traffic, vehicles, etc., busing, and obviously to come up with something that reflects the architecture of the local environment. In this particular case, to take account of the fact that it is an airport based in KwaZulu-Natal. So some of the architectural features of the local environment are taken into account. Now, if you have a look at the drawing, you will note that the building roof actually looks like the wing of an aircraft. So that was quite a unique feature that was built into this particular project. Now, once the conceptual design has been agreed and signed off by the client, a more detailed exercise is undertaken to schedule all the different elements of this particular project. Now, in the olden days, these things were then reduced into drawings, doing it by hand, which was obviously very time-consuming. Nowadays, electronic equipment and computers are used, and in particular systems like AutoCAD, which speeds up the process tremendously and provides a very professional-looking product. Quantity surveyors are the discipline that are now tasked with putting together the measurement of this particular project. If you have a look at the picture, you will note that there are a number of different elements and hugely complex on a project of this magnitude. And it's absolutely imperative that the measurement is done accurately and correctly so that one doesn't experience cost overruns at the end of the day, which is clearly something a client would not want to have. The quantity surveyors are tasked with measuring all the different elements and putting them into a document called a schedule of quantities. You can have a look at that. And furthermore, to develop the contract conditions and the specifications that are relevant to the particular project. The quantity surveyor's role then changes through the course of the project and they become project advisory service. They assist the project manager with regards to ongoing measurements of the project, ensuring that payments are made on time and accurately to the various contractors that are busy constructing the works. At the end of the project, they're also responsible for signing off on all of the works and making sure that the relevant payments have been made to all those parties involved. Now we move on to the role of the construction and people that get involved in the project. I'm going to focus specifically on the role of the civil engineer. I'm going to provide 4 specific examples of where the civil engineer gets involved. Now, it's important to note that a civil engineer can pursue one of 2 different career paths. One of them becoming a design engineer, which is responsible for detailing and designing the actual elements of the project, and the other one being the engineer that gets more involved with the construction work. Now, the first element that I would like to pick up on to try to demonstrate the 2 sides of the engineering profession are the construction of the runways. The runways start with an open piece of land, which has often got grass or trees, and at the end of the project it ends up with something that a big aircraft can land on. Well, how do we get to that point? Firstly, it's important to understand that the design engineer has to do a detailed evaluation of the existing ground conditions that you cannot see below the ground. He does this by a detailed investigation, taking samples, determining the types of materials that are available for construction, and ultimately coming up with a design which will permit the strength of the runway to withstand the type of force incurred when an aeroplane lands on it. Once that has been determined and reduced into a drawing and specification, the construction engineer takes over and he builds the particular runway. Now, when you're looking at the pictures, you'll note that the first part of the construction is just ready to dig a big hole in the ground. Of course, you need to fill up that hole with something that will ultimately end up with a very strong pavement structure that will enable the aircraft to land. So it's the construction engineer's duty to make sure that the specifications are adhered to, the right types of materials are used, the right methodologies are used, and he's responsible for a number of other elements including safety, health, environment, quality control, and of course productivity, which is important in any business. The second element that we'd pick up on is the construction of the steelwork associated with the buildings. Now, once again, the design engineer is tasked with understanding what are the design loads required and what is the structural steelwork going to be carrying. In this particular case, it will be carrying the roofing structure of the entire central terminal building of the airport. The design engineer must take account of the wind loads that are going to be applied, possibly rain, possibly snow. Of course, in Durban it doesn't snow very often. However, one has to take account of all these different factors and then come up with a specification for this particular structure. Then in conjunction with the architect to determine what this should look like and what types of materials would be utilized to construct. Once this has all been determined, the building engineer or the civil engineer gets involved and he then takes over and starts constructing and erecting the particular elements. Now, of course, these elements cannot be manufactured on site, so they're often pre-manufactured and welded or bolted in sections and often moved to the project. And as you can see from the picture, these come in various different shapes and sizes and are often erected using large lifting equipment. The construction engineer is also responsible for the safety. As you can imagine, these are big loads and they need to be managed in a correct fashion so that it's safe for all those involved. Ultimately, of course, the end result is worth the effort that's put in. The third element I'd like to have a talk about, and you can have a look at the picture, is the control tower. Now, the control tower is designed in a very similar way to the other 2 elements that I've spoken about. What is different about the control tower is that it's actually manufactured in a very different way, in that the concrete structure, which forms the inner core, is constructed using a sliding mechanism or methodology. And this means that it's a continuous process from start to finish. So when this particular tower is constructed, it starts at the bottom, and then wet concrete is poured into a mold or a form, and as it sets, initially within 4 to 6 hours, so this mold is actually raised using a special jacking system, and the next set of concrete is poured into it. Now, after a period of about 4 to 6 weeks, the concrete tower is complete, and then the mold is taken off, and then the superstructure is constructed. Now, once again, a unique methodology has been applied there by the construction engineer to construct the superstructure on the ground, around the base of the control tower, and once it's complete, to then lift it up to the top using a special system of jacks and pulleys, and then to complete the structure. And as you can see, there's a picture from the inside of the control tower where we're busy finishing off all the control paneling and the glazing and cladding and so on. Very unique project and certainly one of the highlights of this particular project. The final element that I would like to talk about is the construction of a bridge. Now, the bridge on this particular project was located over the existing N2 freeway, and it was unique in 3 different ways. One is that the existing bridge was only going to be used for access, and it was going to be demolished in the final phases of the project. The other unique element is that there are 2 bridges that one crosses over the other. And the first bridge is constructed using a conventional method, which if you have a look at the picture, you can see the staging works and the temporary support works. And as you can understand, one needs to maintain access below the bridge for traffic and so on. The second bridge, which goes right over the top of the first bridge and the existing freeway, had to be constructed using an incrementally launched sliding method. And this is very similar to that used on a control tower, except that it's now on a horizontal plane as opposed to a vertical plane. If you look at the picture once more, you can see where the bridge is constructed and how it's then pushed out into air over the different piers and columns that are constructed to support it. And in the end position, you can see the complete bridge. And then the final interchange layout demonstrates these 2 bridges where the existing one has been removed, and of course all the interchange works and so on that are associated with it. Now, it's also worthwhile to mention that if you have a look at that completed interchange, you'll understand that traffic flow is very, very important. So one of the things that a civil engineer also gets involved in is transportation or traffic engineering. And this would take account of volumes of traffic, types of traffic, different speeds of traffic, etc., and how they need to get from one point to the other. So you can see that quite a unique facility has been built to address those particular concerns. The building contractor is now the person that is employed to construct the building works. And the building contractor is very similar to the civil contractor in many ways, in that he takes control over the design, and he is then responsible for producing a building which is something that will stand forever. Now, the very first picture on this particular set of slides shows what happens when you start with a building. And of course, it's very much like building a runway. There's nothing in the initial stages. And the very first thing you do is you take a big fleet of equipment. This particular equipment that we're talking about is excavators and trucks, and you dig a hole in the ground. Now, the hole in the ground is just so that you can provide a proper founding position for this particular building. And in addition, it doubles as an underground parking basement. As we go through this particular set of slides, you'll notice that another type of machine is brought on, and this is called a piling rig. You can see there's a number of them in this particular picture. And this piling rig is designed to provide a good founding for this particular building. And what it really does is it drills holes of up to 1 meter diameter into the ground until it gets to a point where it's actually very solid. And then these are concreted and they form a foundation that is adequate to put a big building on top of. Now, as you move through the sequence of these particular slides, you'll notice how the building starts developing from the underground sections, where you start then seeing temporary staging and formwork. It's all the scaffolding that's put into place for 2 reasons. One is to protect the people and provide safe access, and 2 is to support the work that is going to be built on top of it. And you can see how much of that is associated with this particular project. And the building then progresses until it gets to the top, and you put on the roof structure. Now, of course, the building contractor is also responsible for a number of different elements that go into a particular building, and these cover plastering, tiling, electrical works, and I know we've heard about electrical works and so on today. And of course, all the nice stuff that looks good inside a new airport building. including all the fast food outlets and stores and so on that are associated with this particular project. Now, the project manager is the entity that pulls all of these different things together. What is the role of the project manager? He has to have a bit of an understanding of all of the different elements so that he can adequately liaise with each of those different parties to make sure that they are all working in sync with each other. The project manager is also responsible to report to the client, and he provides a scheduling function, which means that he is responsible for time management, as well as a cost function, which means that he has to report in on the budget that has been put forward at the onset of the project. The project manager also has a number of other staff members that report to him, and they would typically handle things like occupational health and safety, quality control, environmental matters, etc. So it's a very important role without which this entire project could not be put together. Electricians and electrical engineers are a critical part to this particular project. The very first thing that needs to be done is to determine what is the load demand on this particular project. And as one can appreciate, with such a big project, the load is significant. Now, what does the load mean? Well, it really means how much electricity is this project going to require to make it run successfully. So the very first thing that has to be done is a detailed calculation of all the different units that will be drawing electricity and adding them up to come up with a load demand. Secondly, that demand needs to be satisfied from the national grid. In this case, it was Eskom. And that infrastructure needs to be put into place, and that could be a combination of electrical pylons, electrical overhead lines, and once all that has been established, then the third element happens, and that is now the installation of the cabling and all the electrical infrastructure. That is where the electrical contractors get involved, and they get appointed typically by the building company, and then they come and install all their cabling and all their different lights and switches and all the nice things that make the airport work. The last element I would like to talk about is the plumbers and the water and sewer and so on that is put into this particular project. Now, as we can appreciate, we can probably go without electricity, but we cannot go without water. And of course, wherever you need to have lots and lots of people, you need to have a place where you can flush the toilet. So it's one of the most important elements is now to make sure that the water is adequately installed. And of course, once again, it's not just a question of putting a pipeline in, it has to be adequately designed by the civil engineer. And once it's been designed by the engineer, he hands it over to the contractor, who then procures the particular piping that's required. He installs it, he tests it, he makes sure it's fully commissioned and working, and then he hands it over to the airport. Now, of course, once all these things have been put together and you've got a runway, you've got a building, you've got a control tower, you've got a central building where people can move and their baggage and so on can be managed. And then, of course, you've got electricity and you've got water. At the end of the day, you've got a project. And the culmination of all these things, all these engineering and associated professions make up a successful project, which is in fact what King Shaka Airport is. Finally, you can see the finished product, which comprises the cargo terminal buildings, the central terminal buildings, aprons, taxiways and runways. And what a phenomenal project. Once in a lifetime opportunity for any young engineer to get involved in. And I wish you all the very best in your careers, and I trust that you will join us in this particular exciting industry.
Make sure that we take it to the top.
I'm certain that the information and tools that you have received today will make a positive difference to your future and your career. As you sit here today, your most valuable asset by far is your future earning stream, and that is your choice. My final advice to you is to use this information to the best of your ability. Go out there and ask questions, contact the appropriate people, investigate your options, and never give up. You are the master of your own destiny. Like Nedbank, you too can make things happen.
Make sure that we take it to the top.
We hope this broadcast built a bigger picture in your mind of all the amazing possibilities in the construction industry.
Yes, and if you enjoyed it as much as we did, please speak to your educator to find out about the coming week's topics.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We'll be back next week.
Yes, and I'm really looking forward to seeing you.
No, I'm really looking forward to seeing you.
No, I am really.
We got to keep it moving. We got to keep it high. We got to keep it moving. Make sure that we take it to the top. We got to keep it moving. We got to never stop. We got to keep it moving. Make sure that take it to the top. We got to keep it moving. We got to keep it high. We got to keep it moving. Make sure that we take it to the top. We got to keep it moving. We got to never stop. We got to keep it moving. Make sure that